podcast is part of the Sports Social Podcast Network.
New tournament, new faces, same result, and one of us was actually there. Let's get stuck in. Hello and welcome back to Bit of an Animal, the South African Rugby Union podcast here on Global Gainline's YouTube channel. South Africa versus England, I'm going to get stuck in. But before we do that, I'm happy to be joined by John and Temikosi, but also a new face on our channels, on your screens and in your listening platforms. Bandile. Bandile, tell our viewership about yourself.
Hi, my name is Bandile. I'm a primary school teacher and sports coach at Hurleyville Primary. I'm also a competitive powerlifter. I was recently at the World Powerlifting Champs in Lithuania, where I finished 20th out of 21, but it was a great experience. It was a great honor to represent my country. Glad to be on the podcast.
Awesome. Bandile, can you tell us like what are your maxes in terms of like bench press and deadlift, those type of thing?
Bench press 150, squat 270, and deadlift 300. I've
Very
done that in
impressive.
training, but yeah, it's a bit harder in competition.
Temikosi is having a stroke there on my screen. All right. This sounds like
Right?
you're
Isn't
deadlifting
is
Temikosi's weight. His reaction is like he's having a stroke.
it's too
All right,
much
guys.
weight. Like I'm just saying.
The yeah, leave some weight to the rest of us, Badile. All right, guys. So South Africa brushed aside England in a much more convincing game than I thought it would go in. Shout out to Jacob Basford who joined me for the preview pod. Preview pod, by the way, who was sponsored by Culture Lab Kombucha. More about them later. So the whole series of preview pods is going to be sponsored by them, including this week's one where Ethan from the Scottish Rugby podcast, the new Scottish Rugby podcast here on the Global Gainlines, the Scottish Rugby Realm, will be joining me for the preview pod as soon as Gregor Townsend announces his squad. So, Jean, you were there, but give us, before we get to the actual game, and this is the second year in a row you've watched the Springbok game at Ellis Park. Give us the full experience of what it's like living in Gauteng province and traveling to the venue, because I understand you did use the Gautrain. Did you use public transport throughout the journey? And also, what was it like in the stadium? Were the concessions affordable?
Um, yeah, so last year I joined up with a tour group who had a bus going to and from, which was obviously pretty convenient. This year I did use public transport, so um jumped on the Gautrain here at the Centurion station, stayed on the train all the way to Park Street. From Park, you literally just walk out the Gautrain, over to the Prasa station, down the Prasa station escalators, and you get on the Prasa train. And as soon as it's filled up, they take you to Ellis Park. You get off, you walk down the stairs, and bam, you're at the station. It's actually really convenient. And I just want to give Prasa a massive shout out. They had a whole vibe going. They had like a speaker, they had tunes going. All the guys were like singing songs, clapping hands. Um, it really was a pretty good vibe and it was pretty fun. And I actually have to give Prasa double kudos because they kept running during the night, where the Gautrain, apparently the decision was made for the last Gautrain to leave Park Station at 8:30, which is barely an hour after the final whistle. So that gives you like no time in the stadium to hang around. And I mean, we made it on time. We couldn't catch the final train. Well, I couldn't catch the final train. And we ended up getting on buses. They had to get buses in for us, and we were like six people coming to Centurion. So the poor bus driver had to drive us all the way from Park Station to Centurion at 9 o'clock at night. So yeah, I guess kudos to Prasa for coming to the table. And I think Prasa is underrated. I would definitely do that experience again. Um, I just wish that Gautrain comes to the table to the same extent as Prosa. In the stadium, yeah, things get expensive pretty quickly. Beer's gonna cost you $50, 45 if you want to go non-alcoholic. Single brandy and Coke, $45. Double brandy and Coke, $85. Want about if you want about 100 grams worth of biltong or chili sticks, you're looking at $70. Anything to eat, the cheapest you can get away with is, I think there's a pancake stand where you can get 6 pancakes for about $60. That's about the cheapest food there is. So
Yeah.
yeah,
Um,
not an expense, not a cheap day at the races.
yeah, it's like going to Cape Town Stadium, yeah, and then like they're trying to sell you a 40 rand 500 ml energy and or Powerade. Not entirely thing. Jean, where did you sit within the stadium? Did you sit the similar place to last year or slightly different?
Similar place to last year, so on the north upper stand. But then at about halftime, I decided there was some value in my ticket that I hadn't yet squeezed out.
Mm-hmm.
So I went to one of the lower seats, went
Yeah.
to explore what it was like to sit on the lower tier in someone else's empty chair. And I watched the second half from there at a bit of an angle. But it was fun because I got to where in the first half South Africa was playing away from me, second half they were playing towards me, which is really fun to see. Also slightly terrifying when you see a guy like Zachary Porthen demolish 3 humans and come in your general direction.
It's interesting because what was the vibe like in the stadium? Because it's a 62,000 seater stadium, but they were able to eventually get 52,000 people into paying customers into the stadium. So from the videos that you shared with us and the ones we saw on social media, the atmosphere seemed quite enjoyable. Would you concur?
Yeah, I'd say match day count that they gave us was 52,920 people through the gates.
Hmm.
Um, yeah, there was a pretty good vibe. I think it was a pretty good vibe. Mostly because a lot of people had arrived quite earlier, and their credit cards had taken a bit of a beating. Um, yeah, I think generally it was a good vibe, for the people who were there. I don't think there were, a lot of people who were upset or confused or anything like that. I mean, how sad or angry can you be sitting in Ellis Park with 53,000 other people going bananas every second? So,
Yeah.
yeah. No,
Did you
the vibe
did you
was pretty
see
good.
did you see any English supporters?
Actually, saw a couple. Sorry. An elderly gentleman from England was sitting in my row. He had a very suspicious hydro pack on his back that I don't think contained water. Um, And then yeah, they were sprinkled throughout the stadium, but for the English, Joburg is pretty much same as Liverpool or Northampton or one of those places. So I doubt they felt out of place being in Joburg. Um, yeah, there were a couple. Unlike the Australian fans last year, they didn't sit together. So that just goes to show the English even annoy each other.
It was just interesting because like last time I was at Cape Town Stadium, the Connacht supporters all like grouped together and they were all wearing Connacht thing, but I think they were on some sort of tour. There were some Irish supporters sort of scattered around here and there. Jean, onto the game. We won. It was a weird first half, but then we shifted into gear in the second half. Your thoughts?
Yeah, I think in the first half we got off to a barnstorming start, which is nice. I mean, no one says no thank you to 3 quick tries in the first 15 minutes. Um, and for a certain, I think the 10, 15 minutes before halftime, I started getting the feeling of here we go again. A la Australia last year, playing ourselves tired and then allowing them to slip back into the game. They scored the 2 quick tries in succession. I think mostly because, there's almost just a natural swing of momentum. You can only be dominant for so long against a top 5 team. before they eventually get their hands on the ball and start getting some possession and start getting one or two things right. So it wasn't unexpected that England started to get into the game. Looking at how we came out second half and just putting them to the metal almost immediately was 100% the right thing. And I think that was the message coming out of the changing room was first 15 minutes we need a try. If we don't get a try, it's going to turn into a slugfest and it's going to become a penalty kickoff or it's going to become who gets the last turnover or penalty or whatever. If we get a try within the first 10 minutes, they're cracking. And we'll get another try and we'll get another try and we'll get another try. So I think, in terms of a broader strategy, that was the right thing to do. Some interesting things. I actually think England countered us extremely well. Marcus Smith was on the money in terms of positioning for countering the box kicks from the box. The only problem was he's not competitive in the air. He doesn't have the height or the jump to compete with the likes of Colby, Kirtley, or Willemse. And then yeah, I just think that England's kicking out of hand sort of played into our hands. If you take a look at yeah, sure, they force Willemse back 20, 30 meters, but then he kicks a 50-22. That sort of breaks your speed heavily. And I can tell you, when he kicked that 50-22, the whole stadium went nuts. So the kind of heads-up rugby that we were playing, just saying, look, take your chances, shoot your shot, was pretty good. And then one thing I noticed, and I'll definitely look out for it in the future, is with Mani Libokonten, one thing it does actually provide us is it allows both our wingers to stay up because he slots into the backfield. So now you've got good out defense out wide, when normally you've got this sort of pendulum of one winger coming back to assist the fullback, and then as the attack swings over, this winger comes up and the other winger comes back, which creates a problem because the moment your winger makes a tackle, your backfield is exposed. Whereas with Libokonten, we can keep the wingers up. We've got good defense, the whole pitch is covered, and we've got two excellent kickers out the back. So I really think that was a clever play, putting the 10 and 15 at the back. Um, so yeah, but really impressive by the Boks the way they didn't allow themselves to slip away or slip out of the match because the hard work was done within the first 30 minutes.
Very interesting. I appreciate the insight from the stadium on Marcus Smith because like the critique of people watching on TV was just like, oh, he's shit. But there's obviously nuance to it. He's a professional rugby player. I mean, Stormer supporters would Bryce is still having nightmares where Harlequins beat the Stormers earlier this season. With Marcus Smith playing a very good game in that, but in his preferred position at fly half, to be fair. Demikosi, this was at Ellis Park, which is the home of your Lions, and I just had to ask you. I know we all can't always be on the podcast at the same time, but I texted you specifically yesterday to say, could you please be on the podcast? Because obviously there's a running theme, there's many running theme going on in this podcast, but one of them that I really appreciate is your disdain for England.
To be honest, I was hoping Pollock would start because they've been talking him up, saying that he was going to be the game-changing player. I really wished he started the game. But yeah, uh, my analysis on the game was actually, before I even go to the analysis, I was actually surprised with how the Boks played. For me, the way the game played out, it seemed like, I'm not sure if this was planned, but it seemed like, what happens when things don't go right, when people have to be moved in certain positions? Can we still adjust? Can the new people that are coming in, can they handle that pressure? It kind of felt like that way. They were kind of being tested up. Things are going wrong. We don't have our first choice goal kicker who's going to kick for the Pulse. Etzebeth is not there. Sia is not there. So now Cameron, Paul de Villiers has to come in. Peter Steph Destroyed is in the wrong position that he normally plays. So I think it was like a problem-solving game for the Boks, and they did pretty well. Like I saw everyone slotting into positions and playing their part, and it didn't feel like it was a disconnected because you thought Vessels was going to be the replacement hooker, but he ended up being a prop. Then he had to go out and someone else had to come in. So you see, I liked how they found a way to problem solve everything that they had. And it's good and reassuring going into the World Cup, knowing that, okay, even in tough times where we have to pull our fourth choice lock, we're still good. It was good to see. In terms of the game, I think England's penalty count was too much. I mean, but it was us that kind of put them on pressure, and they couldn't launch as much as they wanted to, and when they did punish. So kudos to England, but yeah, I just felt like the Boks were just too much for them.
Bandile, there was last minute shuffling in the loose forward trio with Sia unfortunately having to shift out, Paul de Villiers coming in. We got Cameron Andercombe who played every time I've seen him play is plays eight. Usually it's Sheriff Ulrich Low doing the moving to the side of the scrum for the Bulls when needed, because Ulrich Low I also mostly knew as a number eight, and then he sort of shifted to the side of the scrum. You played a bit on the flank as well. Your thoughts on how the team adapted despite the last minute changes?
I think, yeah, and it took them a while to adapt, especially line-out time were a bit exposed there in the first half. But the second half, they got their act together and were able to make their lineouts a lot more competitive, catching the ball, starting. I think we scored 2 tries off the maul, if I'm not mistaken. So it was nice to see how they adapted to that. And they did it pretty quickly. They didn't let England get into the game and finish us off, which they could have if they didn't get the lineouts right. I think that was one of the most critical areas where England was beating us, starting to come back in the game. So I think there were some very stern words, and yeah, they came out in the second half guns blazing.
Yeah, we're actually quite pleased with the start. Yes, 2 weeks ago there was a Barbarians game, but it's more of a warm up, and it doesn't really count as a test match. So this is the first of 13 test matches throughout this season. So yeah, stay tuned to Global Gainlines, and there's a lot more other podcasts on this podcast network. Irish podcast, now a Scottish podcast, the Champions Cup Rewind on Sunday nights now. It was the URC Rewind, then it was the Six Nations Rewind, then it was the Champions Cup Rewind. It's just basically the rewind on Sunday nights. So yeah, please stay tuned and yeah, enjoy. Oh, there's a female rugby podcast, so we'll be talking about the Womans Springboks a bit later as well. Gentlemen, we're fortunate to be South African rugby supporters, and I say Erasmus keeps giving us content. One of these days, he's going to announce the team for the next game at the press conference at the end of the previous game. So we'll look now to a much changed team for Scotland, aka South Africa C. Demikosi, will go to you first. There's some corn horns on the bench for you. Ulrich Low that I mentioned earlier is back. Hendrik Wessels is again at hooker, but maybe he'll come on at loosehead prop. I'm happy to see Apelele Fassi in the mix. Quite a few sharks here and there. Oh yeah, by the way, my even though I'm based in Cape Town and Bandile is based in Johannesburg, we're both Shark supporters, so we've got good taste as it relates to that. Not such a good season, but we look ahead. We look ahead to the future. Temikosi, Evan Ross is there.
Yeah, I'm surprised. I thought Cameron would also be there. I'm not sure if he's hurt or something, but they changed 12 players from the last game, and only, let me see, it's Creole and Nokia. Those are the only two people that retain the same position. Peter Steph Detroit was moved to 7, and who else was also there in the last game that I kind of missed?
Willemse is now 12.
Yeah, Willemse at 12, and you're looking at this team and you're asking yourself, this is a strong team. I'm not sure which one between this one and the one from last week, which one is stronger, but I can clearly say this is a strong team. And one thing I've noticed is also like new combinations, even though some of them play together at their club. You see the 9 and 10, Pollard and Papir. That will be that will be an interesting combination. And we haven't seen that in a while. Nokia and Vita. That's a Bulls combination. I'm assuming, actually, are they playing at Loftus? It sounds like this.
Yeah, they're both.
Look, yeah, looking at this team, this is a Bulls team. Now that I can go, it's basically a Bulls team. But yeah, it's a pretty strong team. I can't wait to see. One thing I can say about it, it seems like they are more mobile than last week, meaning that they are probably looking to play a little bit more instead of relying on their strength. They're probably relying on um how fast, like last week's game where we were fast on the rug ball. I'm assuming that they will want to play a little bit faster. The only person that is slow, according to me, in this whole team is probably Andre Pollard. But yeah, everyone else is just wheels for days, and they're pretty mobile. So I'm assuming that they want to play a fast and mobile pace.
Bandile, are you encouraged how many Sharks players are in this mix?
Yes, glad to see. Especially Apalela Fassi. I think he's a fantastic player, especially in the air. They're going to have a hard time kicking balls to him because his counter attack and his reading of the ball in the air is amazing. So I'm glad to see that he's in the team, especially.
John, this is at your home ground. Bit of a mixed team. Excuse me. Grant Williams shifts to the bench. I'm obviously stoked to see Vincent Tuka there. I hope he gets a good run out. Ben Jason Dixon covering lock again. And Shunu was a revelation of a season since leaving the Sharks and moving to the Stormers. I hope to see a solid scrummaging performance from him. And obviously, everybody's talking about Zach Porthen. Why? Because he's so young and yet so effective at tight head prop, which is really a position people think of as for more mature players. Like you peak at tight head prop later in your career, maybe late 20s, early 30s. Wolkolo starting, which is interesting. There was a lot of talk of Wolkolo maybe should have started the URC final, but I mean, that's very much Monday morning quarterbacking. And then Bowen Finter, now formerly almost a Scottish player, he's going to know these Scottish players very well because he was on the cusp of being picked by Scotland, and then Rassie swooped in, and that worked out in Temikosi's favor because now he's signed to the Lions.
Yeah, look, you have to give Rassie credit. If there's a guy who can wind you up or play mind games for days, it's Rassie selecting Boan Venter at one against the Scots. I mean, they're probably looking at that selection and knowing exactly like why he did what he did. But yeah, I mean, if you look past the two props, but you can even look at Boan Venter. Right. That's a pretty mobile forward pack. You've got Boan Venter, Johan Grobbelaar, Kobus Wiese, Roan Orkee, Paul de Villiers, who I think played really, really well against top tier opposition. He didn't get a lot of turnovers, but he was always hunting against England. Pieter Steph de Toey, Ivan Rust, these are mobile, destructive ball runners. But the other thing that they're good at, they're all excellent tacklers. And if you take a look at the way Scotland plays on attack, um, they sort of go a 1-2 punch out wide, and they like to swing. They like to swing around the corner at the last minute. So you want guys who are mobile, who can make tough hits, dominant hits, and sort of knock the ball carrier back just half a meter, so that the attack loses momentum. Um, Going into the back line, looking at Embrose Papier and Andre Pollard, obviously there you get the sense that if we're going to get any scrum penalties, it's going to be up to Pollard to kick them over. Hopefully, whatever was wrong during that final has left his body or has been exorcismed out of him. Um, and then, yeah, you've got a backline there. Damian Willemse got the close quarter skills. Jesse Creel for defense, which I think is going to be crucial. I can't see them playing anyone else other than Finn Russell against us. I mean, this is their opportunity to make a statement like they did against France in the Six Nations. But any long range kicking, Bandile was 100% on the money. You're going to be risking a lot by sending up a high bomb against Apalele Fassi, Edwin van der Merwe, and Kanan Moody. Those guys are going to be excellent under the high ball. And with Pollard being good at kicking out of hand, the up and unders a la 2019, again, those guys, you're going to need to be on your feet. It's going to be a tough game for Kyle Steyn. Um, Blair Kinghorn at 15 for Scotland, probably. Um, yeah, and then, just taking a look at the bench, I mean, you can't really moan. Very happy for Ben Jason Dixon, who I felt had a solid performance against England, didn't give away any penalties, contrary to what the Stormers coach him on. Vincent Chichuka getting a nice run out in the Bok jersey, also happy. I know Ulrich Loh's been struggling for a while with an injury, and I think that's why he wasn't selected for England. And with the last minute news regarding Evidencia, you have to wonder, coming out of the training camp, how many of these guys were carrying nicks and niggles and things that sort of held them back a little bit. And then very excited for Quayne Horn. I'll be it'll be exciting to see whether he goes on at 10 or 15. Um, yeah, but I think this is a good team. Scotland like to play. Scotland are inviting you into a knife fight. And if you get involved in a knife fight, you're going to lose. And Rassie's pretty much saying, well, we're not coming to a knife fight, we're bringing a shotgun. So, it's horses for courses in terms of slowing the game down and playing to our strengths. But yeah, excited.
Yeah, it'll be interesting. We'll get the Scottish team a bit later. As I said previously, we're going to hope Gregor Townsend. Gregor Townsend, by the way, played for the Sharks, but way before I started following the Sharks. So I only found out that after the fact. And yeah, the preview shows are sponsored by Culture Lab Kombucha, manufactured here in sunny Cape Town, Muizenberg. Temikosi, your thoughts on the team?
Oh no, I just wanted to add, it kind of feels like Glasgow versus Bulls,
Mm,
because basically
yeah,
that's
true.
probably going to be the two teams. Now that I
Mm,
kind of think about it, maybe that's why we went for like a more bull-centered team. And
mm.
also, guys, we need to give props to Kyle Rowe. He was amazing against Argentina. So he's probably going to get a shot. And it would be nice to see Kyle Stain also.
Yeah. Yeah, Carl Steyn gonna be staying at his parents' house. So how many South African players are right now? Skuman, it's Carl Steyn, and then unfortunately Duan is not in the Scottish team right now, but the Scotland selection in terms of like playing people on form is pretty strong because I mean Blair Kinghorn's a good player, but he's not I don't watch the French top 14. So I'm told by our colleagues and friends on the other podcast that Blair Kinghorn's not being picked because he's not in the best of form. And that's why. So that to me speaks to the fact that's a positive reflection on Gregor Townsend. While I like him or hate him, in that he's not picking on reputation, he's picking on form and ability. And then I'm obviously a big fan of TJ Tom Jordan. He unfortunately went off 5 minutes into the game against Argentina with a knock and then came back on. So we'll see how. I think Tom Jordan's more of a fly off and an inside center than a fullback. And speaking of fullback, the last thing I'll say is Damien Willemse. I always like seeing Damien Willemse at 12 because I personally feel that's his best position. Of course, he's um, like a Swiss Army knife who can play multiple positions. Although to be fair, we have players like that now. We've developed it over time. Like Kenan Moody for me, very good on the wing and very good at outside center. Guys, this is the senior Springboks, but we'll look quickly. Let's first discuss the Junior World Cup as a whole. So we've defeated Uruguay, unsurprisingly. Let me switch my camera back on, and we had a more arm wrestle of a game against Georgia, who, as we said in the pre-part discussion, it's the fourth time we're facing them this year. We played them twice in Georgia when we toured Georgia. And then we played them once at Paul Roos, which I was incredibly fortunate to watch. And then we now defeated them at the Junior World Cup in Georgia. Um, Jean, how much of these two games were you able to watch and your thoughts going into the Wales game?
Um, Not really a lot so far. What I'll say is, and this is mostly from highlights and reading the sentiment, is the team is looking very good. It's a well rotated team. I think there's a lot of confusion because a lot of people feel like Riley Norton and Vusi Moyo were plucked and sort of The opportunity was taken away from them to be with the junior Springboks. And then you have to sort of understand that it's difficult, and it probably was a two-way conversation. I mean, Rassie is not the kind of, I don't see him as the type of coach to go to a player and say, listen, I'm going to take a junior world championship away from you to get you ready to be the next Sia or the next Andre or the next whatever. I can see it being a two-way conversation. And because Rassie believes in his players buying into his plan. So if he's got a plan to say, listen, Riley Norton's got this incredible natural leadership and calmness about him, and he sees him as a potential leader um, in the senior men's team setup, that would have been a conversation that he had with Riley Norton. Same with Vusi Moyo to say, listen, I see you potentially having a role to play. I mean, Sasha's injured. We need free fly-offs. Are you willing to do this? Are you willing to give up the junior championship? I can't promise you victory or glory or anything, but are you willing to do this? And often people are now like, oh, but they didn't play against England, forgetting this, and they'll won't play against Scotland, but there's still a game against Wales where these guys can get a run out um, against solid, professional rugby players. So I think everyone just needs to look past the superficial and understand that nothing is given freely or asked of you freely in the Springboks in the Springbok setup. Rassie will have had a good, open, honest conversation with these guys and said, I would like you to do this if you're up for it. If you're not up for it and you want to go to the junior champs, go to the junior champs. But I mean, who wouldn't be licking their chops at the opportunity to be in the senior men's team? Um, in terms of going up against Wales, the team looks pretty solid. I'm very happy. Hopefully, Yakin Ahmed keeps both feet on the ground and waits for the tackler to land before making, the ball carrier to land before making any tackles. Because I really think he's a talent. Not that the under 20 team is in any sort of shortage of talent. It's just incredibly abundant what they have there.
Yeah, we've always had good under 20 teams, but of late, because of the synergy between um, SA Schools, Junior Springboks, Springbok A team and the senior team, as well as sort of like the development through Grand Como Week, Craven Week, which is happening right now, Grand Como Week, which happened like a week ago. Um, there's more of a focus, and they everybody seems to be singing from the same hymn sheet. Uh, Baby Bok head coach Kevin Foote saying, "Hey, look, we're in constant communication with the people below us as in the SA schools as well as the people above us in terms of Springbok A and senior Springbok, and the opportunity for players. It's like, what do you prioritize? It's like it's similar to the conversation of like, why doesn't New Zealand allow players to be picked, even if they don't play in the Super Rugby, is because they're saying, look, we are prioritizing this tournament to then feed into the national team, and you have to make a decision. So you're completely correct in terms of like these young players, and obviously people want us to go on to win 2 Junior World Cups in a row, and it's understandable for people to think, oh, there's less of a chance now we'll win 2 Junior World Cups, but there was no guarantee we were going to do it, even with a full strength, quote unquote, full strength team. I mean, there's so much actually made took the opportunity the other day to make a list of players. I went through the team sheets of the 3 games I was able to watch live here in Cape Town, and then I compared it to the team that's now in Georgia, and I made just a quick list of like players who played really well in those games live that I saw. Who didn't even make it into the original list without Riley Norton and Vusi Moyo pulled out of it. So what's also interesting is that Rassie didn't say anything about Riley Norton per se as it relates to like the Junior World Cup as soon as he was picked. But as soon as they announced that he had a grade 3 hamstring tear and he was out for 10 weeks, he then sort of mentioned that the overall idea was for him to get one game in this 3-match series and then actually be sent on a plane to go play in Georgia. So which would have been awesome. But unfortunately it's not for him. But that's just the hand one's dealt. It's like Kevin Foote said the other day, look, we can lose these guys to the senior team, or we can lose them to injury, we can lose them to illness, anything can happen. We can lose them to family bereavement. So you can't sort of like guarantee that if anybody's going to be there. And that's also a reflection for the players to say, like, don't take any of this for granted. So the players I did sort of note, and I'm sure there are others, would be wing Jade Muller, Altus Rabe hooker, also from Paul Roos, met his dad. Shout out to him. Very, very mobile prop. Bongani Glamini, he didn't make it into the original team either. Lindsay Jansen, another very good wing, didn't make it in the team. And then Thomas Billing didn't make it to the original team, but then when Riley Norton got pulled into the senior team, Thomas Billing got thing. And Kai Pratt's not there because he's also got a injury, a foot injury, by the way. So overall, we're still very much in with a shot of, and we'll look at I'll bring the actual team sheet that we selected up for the Worlds game. We're still very much in the running to win this game. Demikosi, as I bring the team sheet up, your thoughts?
Yeah, just to carry on the sentiment you guys were saying, I don't know. I think if you're good enough to play for the senior team, I think you should go for it. Mostly because I feel like most of your career is you're going to be playing in that phase. So the quicker you adjust to it, the better. But yes, I do understand that he could have won like what is this? Riley Norton could have probably won like 2 Junior World Cups in a row. But hey, if you miss one Junior World Cup and get an actual World Cup, which one is better? You know. But yeah, a pretty strong team and so much rotation, and it kind of feels like you guys were saying, that the synergy between all the fears of Springbok is kind of in some sort of, they're in alignment, and you can kind of see with this team also where compared to last week's compared to was it last week, yeah, the last game that they played, there is a few changes, but you still kind of look at this team and you go like, all right, they can do the job. I trust them to not, I want to say, can I predict the score? Probably it would be not maybe as tight as the Georgia game. I'm not sure about the scoreline, but I am assuming that Wales would put up a better fight than maybe Georgia. So I'm expecting a tighter game, but they could probably still get like what, 40 points on them and still win it, and we'll come back and think like, wow, that was an easy game. So yeah, look, what I'm trying to say is that it's the cohesion in terms of all the structures and the way that the format is being brought down. And you can even see that the junior box way we are using a lot of players, but you don't get to see the disconnection that you would see if everyone kept changing. Like there's so many places in sport where when a few people come in, it disrupts the whole team. The fact that we don't see this in all spheres makes me proud.
Yeah, if I look at the this Pratt through injury and Moya through call up to senior team, the amount of blue chip prospects. Sivaga, I saw him play at Paul Roos. I believe that's the only game he actually played. The assistant coaches did tell me that the Paul Roos game was going to be like the first team, quote unquote first team. But that guy, he's playing under 20. He looks amazing. He already looks like, I wouldn't say the finished article yet, but like to be that physically dominant and athletic, it's quite amazing. Yakin Ahmed, that game I watched, he played at inside center. He didn't play any other games. Ethan Adams was around the team throughout that time. Interestingly enough, when I was sitting next to the players who had not been selected for the match 23, Ethan Seketelo Siyaya asked one of the players for their phone. And I think it was Ethan Adams who gave him his phone. And then they were like, "Oh, what are you going to use the phone for?" It's like, "No, I'm going to watch my school rugby team play right now. And what was interesting is the players on the bench were having conversations about how well they did at school, and they were saying like, "Oh yeah, the one season I went unbeaten," and the other player was saying, "Yes, but you didn't play any top five teams, so it doesn't count." So there's a healthy sort of competition amongst each other there, and it was interesting to see that like while their peers were playing Georgia on the field at Paul Roos, they were looking at a phone watching a school's rugby team. So at least they're really into rugby. But as it relates to this team in particular, the both locks are quite large fellows. I would think of them more as like four locks than five locks at this stage. Not necessarily as tall or as mobile as Riley Norton. Um, and then the fact that Jordan Steenkamp's on the bench, Marcus Muller's on the bench, that's massive impact. Ger Kempo, I believe, played all three games in the South African series against Chile, Fiji, and then Georgia. He's one to look out for, sort of a Peter Steph Toy type player. Jaden Orange on the bench, more of like a more of a mobile lock compared to the ones that were starting. And yeah, actually having Ethan Adams at 12 and Bardenos outside of him instead of Marcus Muller is interesting. Cheswell Joyce is obviously a player who's like shining in this tournament. Interestingly enough, not initially picked in the team. So yeah, I'm excited for this game. I unfortunately won't be able to watch it live, but tomorrow it's starting tomorrow at 4 o'clock South African time. Um, Bandile, your thoughts on the final game in the group stage of this Junior World Cup?
I agree with what you said. I think it's going to be a lot closer, but I think with the strength of the squad and the rotational policy, they seem to be in a line with the senior team in terms of rotating players and having quality players where they just slot in and there's a crazy cohesion where they just do what they need to do on the field and nothing's disjointed. So I just want to, it's a big credit to Rassi and actually the whole of Saru for implementing that because you end up keeping a lot more of your players because some players who would usually be on the fringes would be like, let me go try play overseas. But with this policy, you actually get to play and prolong your career because you're still playing club rugby. So it just keeps our pool of players in South Africa, which is good for the long-term development of the game and sustainability.
Yeah, indeed. Um, guys, Jean, were you able to catch the Women's Springbok game as the curtain raiser to the men's senior Springbok game?
No, I was unfortunately working until I think pretty much an hour or two before kickoff. Um, Pretty much busy with work. So unfortunately I couldn't. I did, however, catch the highlights, and I just have to say I am absolutely crazy impressed with the moves that the moves that they're coming up with in the women's Springbok team. It is amazing to see these things. Um, that maul off the back of the scrum was just genius. Like I love that. You have to have some you have to have a pretty big rugby brain to come up with that. So yeah, I did, however, get to sort of greet a couple of the female Springboks, which was interesting. A couple of um, the second stringers, and actually got to almost ride in an elevator with Nadine Roos and Mornay van der Berg. They caught the lift in front of me. Managed to get a congratulations there in on the win. And I think this is our first win against the US. So just the scoreline in and of itself also speaks says a lot. I think it was a well played match. And it's going to be interesting. I think this Saturday probably I'll have a bit more time because I won't be using the Gautrain who leaves me stranded in the middle of Joburg 9 o'clock at night to get anywhere. So I think this Saturday I'll have a bit more time um, to pay attention to the what the ladies are doing.
Yeah. It was interesting because like shout out to Liesel, Liesel from Rugby 365. I forget your surname. I think it's Hendricks. She wrote an article leading up to the game, the preview on Rugby 365, and she actually picked South Africa by 7. This wasn't necessarily the full strength US team, and they were touring, but they were ranked 8th, and we were ranked 10th. And I thought we, as I said on the Sunday podcast, I thought we'd score a moral victory, but we actually scored an outright victory, and it was down to like preparation and execution, going into that much of a lead throughout the game, and then whoever didn't watch the game actually, USA just scored a bunch of tries at the end when the game was pretty much wrapped up, so there was no jeopardy at that point. And we're playing in them again this week at Loftus, so it's going to be incredibly interesting to see our changes as well as their changes. Not to say that they didn't necessarily take it seriously this week, in that they're probably going to be some interesting tactical moves. And this game was played at Ellis Park, and then this Saturday's game is going to be played just 52 kilometers away in at Loftus. So yeah, shout out to contributor who's unfortunately not able to be on our screens as much anymore, Lisa B. She was constantly updating everybody on Reddit, those of us who weren't able to watch it live. And we'll quickly look also at the schedule for the Women's Springboks throughout this season. So this week we'll be playing at Loftus, kickoff at 1:30. If you're going to watch the Springbok game versus Scotland, I would very much suggest you try and get there a bit early and enjoy this game as well. Should be very good. South Africa Springbok team also missing a few key players, but despite that, still defeating the USA. Then in a little bit of break, and then September 5th at the FNB Stadium, all you Joburgers get to watch these games. It's the full strength Black Ferns versus South Africa. So that's interesting because last year we took on their B team and played very well. The game against Wales will be later that September, the venue to be decided. And then we've scheduled another game, but the opponent and the venue is yet to be decided. So we'll see that. Then we've got an away game against Italy, should be quite competitive. And then the part that I'm really looking forward to, and we'll have some special pods for this as well, some crossover pods with the Irish podcast, the Interpro show. So because it'll be not too far away from me at Athens Stadium. And the thing is that prior to last year's World Cup, the games at Athens Stadium were actually reasonably well attended, and the tickets were also reasonably priced. I think they're going to get an even better atmosphere this year, considering all the momentum the team has gotten from the World Cup as well as from the Women's Super League, which the Bulls went on to win again. So there's back-to-back fixtures kicking off at 3 o'clock in October, on October the 24th. I will be there, and I have spoken to, I'll be at one of the games, hopefully two, or we'll have to see how things pan out, cost of living crisis and everything. But myself and Lisa are trying to coordinate so that at whichever games, she might only also be at one game. So whichever games we're going to be at, we're going to try and be both at both of those games at the same time. And then maybe hopefully do some live content as well. Yeah, so we're looking forward to the Springbok. Also, Springbok women's games, the ticket prices are at least a bit more reasonable as well. Tim and Kosi, your thoughts on the Springbok women's victory over USA?
But they played a very good game, especially the power game. Especially, like, I think most of their try came from 5 meters away from the line, of them just running in, running in. And if it wasn't for that, like, I expected them to play the power game because they are South African first and foremost. But I was actually impressed by the shapes, even their running shapes. Like, some of the plays that they were doing, I think I was now playing at, I think it was center, which was kind of new for me because I know her from playing wing. So I liked how it seems like even their little formations are now at a point where I'm not sure how strong that USA team was, but the fact that they were able to score that much against them shows that maybe they should be considered a big team. I don't know, like, I think it's a Pacific nation. What's the tournament that they use as Australia and New Zealand and Canada play? I think they're good enough for, those, like, I don't know what it's called, but I think
Isn't it
we
the
are at a
women's
point
15?
where, not the 15s,
WX or WX2?
no, the ones where it's just New Zealand, Australia. I think it's like Pacific Nations Cup type of thing. It's kind of like their version of the rugby championships. So I'm thinking now they're at a point where they're kind of good enough to be on a Six Nations, that type of level where they should be getting regular game time. Because I'm thinking if they can put a performance like that against the USA, where USA has the WX6, the W what women's one, and they have their own little tournament that they can practice. But now we seem like we're matching them without our regional tournament outside for Africa. It shows that there is progress. So, and I
Yeah.
think that they should be really considered as a big team now.
Yeah, so that tournament's called the Pacific Four Series. Yeah, I think Hugh Griffin, our colleague on the URC Rewind, he's got a lot more insight into women's rugby. We try and cover as much as we can. I mean, we don't even have time for the sevens. I do apologize, sevens players. If I see you in Stellenbosch, don't get upset with me. I know you guys hang out there at Ant Class. Oh, so you said that he's very encouraged by our progress over a short period of time. What's also interesting, Bandile, is that breakthrough Bulls player Lebogang Railebule, she wasn't even in this team. I thought that she would get a cap here or there, but I mean, it's just the first game this season. She came off the bench, most notably against Western Province here in Bellville, and like outran a wing. So I thought they would fast track her into the team, but they seem to be she is within the squad, is my understanding, but uh and she's quite young as well, but incredibly explosive. I think they seem to be sort of like slow burning her into the broader squad. But Dile, I don't know your complete insight into like women's rugby in South Africa as a whole, but just your thoughts in general.
Well, like he said earlier, the progress is impressive, especially because we're fairly new at the women's rugby compared to the US. They've been a top tier side for, I think, about 10 years now. So it would be nice to see them in a more standardized competition, like a Four Nations or anything like that, to see them consistently play, to see what they can really do. Because if we can introduce them to that, I think they'd do really well.
Okay. Guys, we don't have the Scottish team just yet, but I'm sure there'll be some South African names there, like McVan der Merwe. But we'll go on predictions on vibes alone, starting with the Jujon.
Yeah, look, I, I'm bad when it comes to predictions. I think I think the box at the end of the day will be too strong for Scotland. Um, but I do suspect the scoreline will be closer than what England got, simply because Scotland, in a sense, Scotland almost has the opposite in terms of a coach. England have got a coach who is by the numbers, by the system, until even beyond the wheels falling off. And Scotland's almost got a coach where, if the vibe's on, guys, just, play ball. So I think, Scotland might be able to adapt to the Springboks better. Um, it's been difficult for them in recent years playing us, but I think the scoreline will be a touch closer than where England got to.
Then Mikosi, your thoughts?
Um, now that I'm thinking about it, I'm thinking that Scotland can also attack really quickly, like Glasgow. Like that's why I mentioned Glasgow before. I think the fact that they can attack really quickly, it will come down to the Springbok normally have gaps and periods where they kind of switch off or where they kind of lose that momentum. It'll it's going to be a challenge to see when that happens, how much points will they leak, because I'm expecting a few guys from Scotland during those times. And if we could manage those times pretty well, I still think it's going to be a tight game. Maybe the score might not reflect it because even England was a tight game, but looking back, look at the score. So I think I want to believe that Scotland will surprise us, but if Scotland surprises us, I think Rassie will just go again, change the whole team. Wales are going to be in trouble. So, for Will's sake, Rassie, the Scotland will put up big fights.
Yeah. Then because before we move on from you, you've obviously got really good insight into New Zealand rugby. What were your thoughts on New Zealand versus France and Killer Cam Roygard?
I think Roygard was good. Like, I think I saw the Hurricanes combination. I think all the Hurricanes players, is it Hurricane? Yeah, all the Hurricanes players were kind of performing their best. But the one thing that was nagging at the back of my brain throughout that whole entire match, I'm like, geez, man, this is a B team, France team, and it's giving you guys a tough time. Like it's showing you guys flame. So I'm thinking if it has a start, if they had their starting choice game, I mean their starting choice player, what would have the score been like? Would have been that close? Would New Zealand even have won that game? But yeah, it looks better. It looks better. Still not convinced. Still not
I,
convinced. They
I have a
couldn't
question
even.
for I have a
Yeah,
question for you, Captain New Zealand, man of the island nations. I felt like New Zealand was more cohesive, like they played like a team again. But I can't shake the feeling that they got lucky. Okay,
yeah.
France got in their own way pretty well. France didn't help themselves, but I do feel like they got lucky. Like it was. I think if they didn't have the cohesion that they managed to that Rennie managed to get into the team, then it would have been a very different story.
That's what I'm saying. Because I'm thinking that if France had their total cohesion with their first choice players, would that game have played out that way? I don't think so. I think France might have been stronger. But yeah, New Zealand held out. They look better. But again, looks, we're not sure. We can't see. We can only test that when they come here. Or maybe, I don't know, maybe the next game against Ireland, maybe because Ireland will be like a full strength team. So maybe we'll see how they kind of adapt to, I want to say, the top teams. France is a top team, but yeah, I'm not convinced. They look better, but Australia also did look better. But look at the scoreline at the end of the day.
Yeah. Bandile, if you're unaware, I don't know how much you've watched the podcast before, but this is sort of a running gag because um, I guess we have to announce it here that then because he's also related to Mark Telea. So we'll end with you, Bandile. Prediction on the early predictions because just vibes. We don't have the Scottish team right now, so vibes on prediction vibes on Scotland versus Africa.
I think South Africa will win at least by 20 points. Reason why I say that, I think our set piece is too strong, our scrums, and our game in the air is also better than theirs. Um, just in terms of physicality, I think will be too much for them on the day. Especially if there's no surprises like the last game where we have to change things last minute. I think that's where England was able to get back in the game because it was a last minute change and our lineouts were a bit of a mess. So if it's no surprises like that, I think we'll win comfortably by at least 20 points.
Okay, I appreciate your enthusiasm and your sort of positivity as it relates to that. If you got to the podcast this far and you're obviously enjoying it, like, subscribe, click the notification bell. Please remember in the comment section, in the description section, we are still in the process of recruiting for broader podcasts, Lions podcast, Sharks podcast, Bulls, Stormers podcast. Yeah, so if you would like to join us, if you have opinions on rugby and you don't take yourself too seriously, there's an email below, and we'll set up some video calls and we'll have some discussions and some interviews and stuff. Okay, guys, that ends the show this week. From myself, Bandile, Jean, and Tembi Kosi's stylish turtleneck. Until next week, in Rasi, we trust.